Isa, dalawa, tatlo, go!
Hello and welcome back to Sparking Creativity. We are your hosts. I'm Justin, and that is... I'm not Justin. Did I say I'm Justin?
Keep it. You be Justin this time, and I'll be Trevor.
Oh boy, it's not even late at night for me. I am Trevor, and that is Justin. Say hi, Justin.
Hi, Justin.
In case you don't... oh my goodness. In case you don't know our voices by now. Oh, we're in a silly mood today. We are going to do things a little bit differently, and we want you to hear this story quick, so take a listen.
We were invited to have a week-long ethno-arts workshop among the Blaan, one of the minority groups in southern Philippines. In the workshop, participants were given the opportunity to talk about their many art forms, their dances, musical instruments, their colorful attire, headwear, accessories, tools, etc. They danced to the rhythm and melody of their lute and gongs. They sang old songs and created new ones in their language. Together, we studied what the scriptures say about the different artistic ways God and His people communicate. The Blaan participants slowly began to realize that what they have in their culture is valuable, that what they have, their language and their arts, they could use to celebrate and praise God with. At the end of the workshop, these are what some of them testified. We could create songs, and that in our language. They're our own. Another said, "Ma'am, it had to be you, an outsider, who showed us that what we have is important and valuable." From a pastor, "This is really important to us. We don't need to look down on ourselves. We can be proud that we are Blaan. I can now walk without being ashamed of being a Blaan." A young lady minister said, "If you, our teachers, had planned to come just for your own gain, I pray that you would not arrive. But God brought you, and we are thankful. I like my fellow Blaan to be proud and not ashamed."
Okay, so the story was sent in by a friend and colleague of ours named Roce, and we were asking for stories, and she was one of the first ones that sent one in with her own voice recorded, which we appreciate. And there were so many great things that happened in this story. One of the favorite things that we love is communities being able to realize and recognize that they have something that's valuable and something that they can use in their worship. But what really stuck out to me was the one quote that said that it had to be you, an outsider, who showed us that what we have is important and valuable. And that just really struck me because we've talked about the ways that an ethno-arts worker can come alongside communities and help. And oftentimes, in most of our stories, I believe they've all been outsiders, for the most part, who have been involved and been the ones to help spark some of that creativity. And we've talked about, why do we need outsiders? We've talked about the question of are the insiders not coming up with their own stuff? Or are they not worshiping with their stuff? So we've sort of covered some of that, but I just wanted to go into this deeper. There's so much there about the role that an outsider can play in helping and coming alongside a community. And there's also this dynamic of what's the potential harm that an outsider could do, or how they could hinder this sort of awakening in a community. And so what better person to talk about this topic than a couple of outsiders, but someone who is a part of both of those worlds. She's an insider in her own community, and she also serves and goes to other communities and helps. So she could really helps go deeper into this topic a little bit more. So thankfully she met with us and let us ask a few questions and shared some more stories. And so we're going to hear from her and go deeper.
You're going to love it. Here we go.
Here's our conversation with Roce. We are here with our very special guest, our first guest ever, and it is a real privilege and treat to have her. Will you please introduce yourself?
Hello, Justin. Hi, Trevor.
Hello.
Magandang umaga, magandang hapon, magandang gabi. Ako po si Roce. I'm Roce from the Philippines, serving in the area of ethno-arts and orality. Hello to everyone all over the world. This is so exciting.
It is
It's so
exciting.
good to have you here.
We are thrilled to have you, especially talk about the topic today. Before we dive in, though, I think it would be great to hear how you became involved in this area of ethno arts and orality and what that looks like for you.
Thank you for that question. I have been a music teacher and a seminary instructor for many years. I played music in church, and I thought that was to be my lifelong calling, just be in the church and in the school. Then I sensed this strange leading from the Lord to leave the seminary where I've been teaching for many years and to serve Him through music where people did not know the Lord yet. And as I was figuring out what that meant, I came across a 3-month training program that had music and missions as its tagline. And I knew that was where the Lord was leading me to do. So, it was a step of faith to take a break from the seminary and eventually resign. And, not knowing where my next salary or funds will come from. But I just knew that the Lord was leading me to serve people who did not know Him yet. And that was through music and the arts. And, it was through training in a school in Thailand. I don't know if that answered your question, Justin.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I just want to say, too, that anyone stepping into this work is taking a step of faith because, as we've talked about on the show before, it's kind of new. It's a new area of service. It's something that's very exciting for those who have some type of arts background and understand that how meaningful that can be. And we're so glad that you took that step and excited to hear how God has been teaching you and using you and learning from your experience. One thing that Trevor and I have said from the beginning is we still feel very new to all of this, and there's so many people out there, and we want this podcast to be a place where people can hear and share and be encouraged. So thank you so much. We're very excited.
Yeah, and it's great to have someone with a different perspective from a different part of the world. Your story is similar in many ways to ours, but you do have a different perspective. And we've been talking a lot about the difference between insiders and outsiders in a community when you're working with them, and what it's like to be, in our context, we've largely been the outsiders trying to learn, trying to grow, trying to understand the culture and the language. And so we're curious on your perspective of that insider-outsider dynamic in the different roles, the different things that you've been able to contribute to. So one question we have is, what are some ways that outsiders can influence a culture's arts and their worship in a negative way?
Well,
we'll get to the positive later, but in a negative way.
Yes, but
There are things to look out for.
Yes.
But thank you for your introduction, Trevor, because that before I maybe answered right away, just a background. So when I studied outside my country, I suddenly became outsider of my own culture looking inside now, because that's what we were being taught, right? To learn to look at your own culture. And I realized how much I did not know about who I am back home. In fact, it was funny. I always tell this story. So my classmates all had had their costumes, their local attire brought to the classroom. And I did not have any except a T-shirt that I bought from the mall that said Philippines. Because I did not know what my local attire is, and because we don't normally use it, or it's expensive also. And I had to Google, what does it mean to be a Filipino? I was like, because I did not know, and then I said, "Oh, I'm not the only one asking questions." So, we're a very interesting mix in the Philippines. We were colonized for many years by Spain and then by the U.S. So, where I live in Central Philippines, that influence is very much felt, especially in the churches. So we sing Western hymns, we sing. Songs from Hillsong, songs from UK, songs from the US, and we rarely sing songs from our own until maybe the 80s, when there was this awakening of trying to sing in the language. But there's also this area, the north and the south, where it was relatively untouched by Western influence. And so when we say Filipino, we want to claim those cultures
Right.
in the north and the south, but we're really, the ones in the center are really kind of lost, because that's not really ours too. So when we went to these cultures to teach ethno arts, we really did feel we were foreigners in our own land. So, a negative influence. What are some ways outsiders can influence a culture's arts and worship in a negative way? I guess when it's one-sided. When outsiders think that they alone could give or teach or help, or that they are better, or what they have is better. I kind of had that attitude when I was beginning to work, like I knew better, like I was the hero.
Right.
When they forget, when I forgot, that God has already been working before we came in, or before outsiders came into the scene. There's this sad story, and until now they're reaping some of the consequences in the South. I shared this in one of the papers in a recent conference, where the missionaries said that their attire and some of their cultural practices were not for God, they were for spirits. And so many of their elders stopped going to church, and now that the Christians are starting to wear the local attire, there's a mixed message. I thought you're not supposed to wear that. And so are you Christians, or are you from our belief, our ancestors' belief? So, I guess. I don't know if that answered your question, Trevor.
Yeah, no, that is great. I mean, we have talked quite a bit about that. It sounds like what you're saying in some senses, that Christianity is seen as other, as separate from cultures in that case, that it's Western, or it's seen with all of the baggage, all of the influence from another culture, and it's not mixed. It's not truly a part of the culture, or outside of the culture, really. That Christianity doesn't need to be one culture or another, but it's for everyone. So that's very good. It's a very interesting perspective, especially when you were talking about going to school and flipping your perspective and saying, I don't really understand who I am. I think I've been there too. Once leaving my own country and then coming back, I go, oh my goodness, my culture, I didn't really know what it was, but I'm seeing it in a totally different way now that I've just physically been removed for a little while from it. And then you come back and you start to notice those things. So that's very insightful. Thank you.
One thing I've heard and from my experience has been, we've been told by insiders that previously outsiders have come in with whatever intentions they had, even for the best of intentions, and viewed, whether it was their language or an art form or some artistic expression is either being outright sinful or not appropriate for worship because of whatever the roots were, whatever they had, whatever their beliefs and worship practices were previously. And by outsiders, I don't just mean people like us who've come from another country. It could be whatever the host culture is in that country. Also, there can be what I would consider maybe just a lack of understanding, or just an ignorance to what it means to them, and just assume that it's bad. And my culture has had this where certain instruments were used in rock music, and so that wasn't going to be appropriate for worship. And I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit to just that lack of knowledge that people have when they first encounter something, or they see something that doesn't sit right because they don't understand it. What could they do instead, approaching it for the first time?
That actually is almost an entire paradigm shift and a conversion of the heart and mind. Because I guess it's human nature to judge so fast, and then only belatedly realize, if the Lord shows us, that we've been judging according to our own standard, our own cultural standards. I guess I would probably say it's so easy to say withhold judgment, right? So withhold judgment, but it's just so automatic to judge. And withhold judgment, I think, comes of just being open to learn, as you said earlier, Justin, being open to learn what is the root, and that will take time, knowing what questions to ask, knowing when to ask, and to just really come with a clean slate, like not pretending to know nothing, but really having a stance that I don't know anything, so that you're open to learn and learn from others. And I don't know if I'm answering it, but it's like, if you know so much, the other person knows so much too. It's not that you're not better or you're not inferior from the other. So yeah, that's one of the things that took a long time to change for me, is that delaying judgment, withholding judgment, so that I am able to be more compassionate and be more understanding. Yeah. Did I answer that question, Justin?
Yes. Yeah, thank you. It's just being curious and being open to learning,
Yeah.
setting aside your own whatever meaning you might assign to what you see from your background. But I like that, with withholding judgment until you find out one way or the other.
Yes. There was this quote, and maybe one of you would know where it's from. I keep going back to it, but now it's lost in my files. It said something like, when you go to a new place, it's good to remove your sandals, to remember that you're treading on holy ground, lest you forget that God was there first. Something like that. So if any one of you out there would know where that quote is from, it has helped me a lot. It's like, yes, God has been here. So, it's not my work. And I cannot change people. Only God can do that. But I can love, and I can listen, and I can learn from them. So.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
This is a good segue into what are some ways that outsiders could contribute to what God is already doing there in the community with their arts in a positive way. How can we come alongside and help?
Yes, by some of it I mentioned earlier, like by being genuinely interested, asking questions, being sensitive to our blind spots as insiders, because we do have blind spots, and lovingly pointing that out to us. But we can only accept what you're saying if we trust you, if we know you. Um, I always like to share the story of our colleague Maria. So we're in ethno arts. We go to communities. We encourage people to sing in their language, to use their musical styles and dance their traditional dances. So that's what our language is, and I preach that very well. And then Maria is from Australia, and she says she's serving in the she's served in the Philippines with her husband, and with tears in her eyes, one time she asked me, we were in a coffee shop, and she said, "Ate Rose," she said, "I cannot understand you. That why do you preach to the communities? Use your language, create your songs and dance your dances. But when I go to your church, you sing, shout to the Lord. That's our song." She said she was really crying, and I was like, I didn't know what to answer. I tried to answer very defensively. But I think that was for me very, how do you say, very, very helpful. I wasn't offended with her question because she said it in earnest, in all honesty, in all innocence also. She really wanted to know, because how come me, I preach one thing and then I was practicing another? And it pushed me to study. Why? Why do we do that? Why do I do this still? Even if I was trained in ethno arts, and it forced me to write an article, and it's still an ongoing study and ongoing challenge, living out what we teach to others. And it's not easy. I found out it's not easy because I was up against history and hundreds of years of practice and mindset. So I should not think that it's easy to change that. And it really, really needs the Holy Spirit and the community of believers. I'm very helpful for Maria, an outsider, giving that insight. And I also need to remember that we have blind spots as insiders. That's why I always believe in the role of outsiders. That outsiders should not totally leave the places where they're serving, because they're very, very helpful in a lot of areas that insiders don't see. So.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that. Yeah, just the role of a passionate outsider coming in and saying that to you, and just it's that spark we talk about all the time. It might not be sparking creativity. It might just be sparking you to remember and to remind yourself of your own culture and your own, the own struggles you have. And that's really interesting. Not that the outsider had the answers for you, but could at least see you from a different perspective. And I think that's sometimes the only role that someone coming in from any type of outside position, even if it's just a neighboring town, can come alongside and say, "Hey, I'm seeing this thing that you might not be aware of because you live it every day." I think that's very important to have that kind of insight and that kind of discernment to be able to say, maybe something needs to shift or to change in you. So that's very, very good. That's a very good reminder to me.
If I may add, I think it also helped that Maria lived in our country for a long time, and we were friends. So I think
absolutely,
yes, to speak into to speak into a negative or an observation right away, it will probably build walls rather than bridges. So maybe how we do it first in workshops. We ask, what are you proud of in your culture? How do you say, appreciative inquiry? So maybe do those things first, and then earn your right to speak those valuable insights. And
That is very, very excellent insight and clarification. So I appreciate that.
I hear you saying that relationships are really important for for this dynamic to work, for insiders and outsiders to collaborate and
yes,
to be able to work together.
that's right,
Um,
Justin.
And so I imagine it's different if you're in a workshop setting, like if you're going to a different village that you don't know these people and you've been invited in. That situation would be, you have a lot less time, I guess, to build relationships than if you were like Maria, who's lived in the country for a long time and had opportunity to connect and build those relationships. And so both are important. So what do you do when you are just there for a week or two and have that opportunity to pour into people and get to know them? Do you have some thoughts on how you can build those relationships quickly enough to earn that right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess the first few days, first few hours are very important. Genuinely letting them feel that they're loved at the get go, that they're special. I remember we had just a few days in one place. It wasn't even a workshop. But we were asking questions and appreciating this older lady who was singing so long lines, without breathing in the middle. And so we were like so impressed. And so we said, wow, that's so good. And we were just, affirming her. And I don't know what else we did, but after we left, she told somebody who told us that, because in that village, many, many foreigners, many outsiders come and said, they're different. They said they were describing us as different. She felt comfortable with us. And I said, what did we do? And I think it's just that we cheered her when she sang, and maybe, yeah, so I think genuinely appreciating people whenever you see something good in them or something that you think is beautiful. Knowing their names is also important. We have this favorite activity, right, with our mentor. She would ask us to draw our names, and that's such a very, how do you say, it's an activity that sparks creativity in people, and yet you get insights on who they are. And so, those activities where you just get to know them a little bit more, not in an informal, friendly manner. And of course, letting them sing their songs, not you singing first, but them singing first, so that you get to applaud them. Eating with them when it's time for snacks and breaks, eating with them. Having pictures taken with them. Oh, they love that. And learning to listen. Yes, that's another one. Learning to listen. And if they have a question, I have learned not to answer the questions. To ask the question and then answer with more questions. That's another thing that I've learned, yes. Because I think to give them answers, as Todd said, give them the dignity of answering questions. So I said, wow. So it gives value to them when they are able to answer their own questions without them realizing it sometimes. So I don't know, Justin, is that what you were asking about? Sometimes I get to...
Yes.
Oh, that's very good. That just reminded me of the difficulty I had while working in South America, just learning the culture that we were working in. We found out after a while that you couldn't just ask questions and expect answers. Like I think you just said it a little bit, that you have to find the way to get them to answer a question without thinking they're answering a question, sometimes based on that culture. And we just wanted to know so much. We wanted to learn. We wanted to ask those questions. But in their culture, they're just saying, why are they asking these questions? It's so aggressive. It's so
Yes.
different. So it was genuinely, it was years of building a relationship before we got to the point where now people will send us information, even, just via their smartphones, and without being prompted, without being asked, because they understand that we value that and we love to know them and we love to get to know more about them and their families and their culture and appreciate it, as you're saying. So that's really good insight. Finding the right way to approach and to ask and give value. That's very, very good.
Thank you for the reminder, Trevor, because it's also hard when we realized, like, there was this one community that, yes, the elders did not appreciate us asking questions because it was disrespectful. They asked the questions, not the younger ones. So, but I don't know how I think we're still navigating through that
Sure.
that experience. So thanks for the reminder. Yes.
Yeah, it's very, very individual. So everyone's experience can contribute. Just sharing these even with each other. Those of us who work in this field, it's really good to hear different experiences, to be aware, to have more tools in your tool belt down the line. Should you run into a problem, say, "Oh, I think I heard someone talk about that. Maybe I should call Roce and see what insight she has into getting to know this culture." So that's very good. What, as you look ahead, as you are planning for the future, as you're seeing what's happening around you or seeing new recruits come up, what are your hopes and dreams for the future of ethno arts, just as a field? What are some things that you look forward to with hope?
That's an entire paper. But I've written here some that the different ethno-linguistic groups will be encouraged to use their language and art forms to worship the loving and living God. That they too may learn to listen to other voices. Sometimes when we go to communities and they are listened to, so they're very, very happy, and that hopefully that will also spark them to listen to others, and that it's not just their own voice. So that all may know that 1,000 languages, 1,000 musical sounds, 1,000 colors cannot begin to declare how big and how great our God is. So yeah, maybe just more of this, more of us, maybe going out and encouraging, and more voices being heard. The kaleidoscope of worship. Yes, it's boring, right? If it's just one style.
Amen.
Agreed.
So yes, God made just a colorful world out there, and yeah. So.
Beautiful sentiment. And I'm thinking about the implications or the applications of all of this in our own circles, whether we live cross-culturally or not. We all have neighbors and friends and people that work at the grocery store that you see all the time, and we're surrounded by people that we would be considered outsiders too. And just I appreciate your heart for getting to know people and just being open and curious, because that translates and applies to any situation, no matter who we are and what we're doing. We can be a light, the light of Christ in that way.
That's true. Yeah, and that I need to remind myself too that my being a light is not just in workshops or in the classroom. Mm-hmm. Yes, you're right, Justin. It's also in the grocery store, yes.
Yeah, it's I guess for those of us who are in this kind of work full time or even part time, that becomes your area of ministry. But God puts so many people in our paths, and so many people around us that we could be curious and notice and learn from. And in that way, our own lives are also enriched from the beauty and the color and, like you said, all that's around us. Well, Roce, I am so grateful for this conversation. We could take this so much further and deeper. I just wonder if you have any final thoughts for what would you as an insider of your own communities want outsiders to know if they were to be working in your context or working with any communities?
I guess to get to know us first before recommending solutions to our problems. Getting to know us first, getting to know our stories, our successes, our struggles, getting to know our journey with God. I think, and then so that we can have a conversation. Yeah. And I guess that it's a dialogue. It's not just us listening to you. Hopefully, you'll have time to listen to us too. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Roce. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you too. This has been wonderful. Thank you for letting me talk and talk.
Absolutely. Come back. Share more stories.
Thank
It doesn't
you.
need to be just us.
Yes, this has been wonderful. Thank you. Now go spark creativity wherever you are.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. We would love to hear what you thought.
What resonated with you today? What questions did this raise? Anything you'd like to learn more about? Maybe you have stories you'd like to share.
Please feel free to contact us at ethnoartspod@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook and Instagram at ethnoartspod.
We also invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. This will help others to find out about the show. Please feel free to share the podcast with others.
We look forward to sharing more with you next time on Sparking Creativity, the Ethno Arts Podcast.